Deep in the swamps of Big Cypress National Preserve, something strange has been unfolding for years. This region of Florida is already famous for one unsettling reason: invasive Burmese pythons. These giant snakes have spread through the wetlands like silent shadows, gliding through dark water, hiding beneath grass, and hunting almost anything they can overpower. But recently, scientists began noticing something unexpected. Some of the pythons were disappearing, not escaping, not hiding, vanishing completely. And whatever was responsible appeared to be hunting the hunters themselves. To understand what was happening, researchers had already been tracking Burmese pythons using radio transmitters. Tiny devices were surgically implanted into selected snakes so biologists could monitor their movements and learn how these invasive predators were surviving so successfully in Florida's wilderness. One day, a transmitter showed that a tagged python was somewhere nearby, so researchers headed into the swamp to locate it. But when they arrived, the snake was gone. There was no body, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Only the signal remained. Even stranger, the signal was moving. Whatever carried the transmitter had slowly left the original location and disappeared deeper into the forest. The researchers followed the signal through the swamp, expecting to eventually find the missing snake. Instead, the mystery only grew stranger. The signal moved steadily forward, but the scientists still could not see the animal carrying it. Eventually, the transmitter stopped inside Picayune Strand State Forest. What they found there shocked them completely. The transmitter was no longer inside the python. It was inside another animal. Since 2013, Florida researchers have relied on radio transmitters because Burmese pythons are incredibly difficult to study in the wild. These snakes hide in dense vegetation, muddy water, and swamp grass, often remaining perfectly motionless for hours. Their camouflage is so effective that people can stand only a few feet away from one and never notice it. Because of this, scientists could not simply walk into the wetlands and observe them normally. The tracking devices allowed researchers to follow the snakes almost in real time. They could see where a python hunted, where it rested, and how it moved through the Everglades. At first, everything seemed normal. Then the disappearances began. Some transmitter signals suddenly stopped moving entirely. Usually that meant one thing: the snake had died. At first, researchers assumed it was just a technical problem. Maybe the batteries had failed. Maybe swamp water interfered with the signal. But the equipment was functioning perfectly. The pythons were actually dying. Then came the incident that changed everything. In August 2020, one tagged python behaved normally for weeks before its signal suddenly froze in place. Researchers assumed they were looking at another dead snake. But after some time, the signal started moving again. Only now, the movement looked different. The tracker no longer moved like a python. Instead of sudden stops and bursts of motion, the signal traveled smoothly and steadily, almost as if an entirely different animal was carrying it. When scientists finally located the source, they expected to find a dead python or at least evidence of a violent struggle. Instead, they found another snake. It was alive, appeared completely unharmed, and somehow contained the transmitter inside its body. Researchers performed X-rays to understand what had happened. The images revealed the curved spine of the missing Burmese python still sitting inside the predator, with the tracking transmitter resting beside it. The truth became impossible to ignore. The python had been swallowed whole. And this was not just one bizarre incident. The same pattern appeared again and again. In May 2021, another tagged python disappeared in exactly the same way. First, the signal stopped, then it began moving again as though the tracker had ended up inside another predator. The same thing happened again in June. At that point, researchers realized something important. Something in Florida's swamps was actively hunting Burmese pythons. That discovery was shocking because Burmese pythons are considered apex predators. Very few animals in Florida are capable of killing one. Even more disturbing was the fact that researchers were tracking only a tiny fraction of the total python population. Nobody knew how many untagged snakes were also disappearing unnoticed. To understand the mystery, scientists first had to understand how the invasion began in the first place. Burmese pythons are not native to Florida. They originally come from Southeast Asia, including Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and southern China. They arrived in Florida through the exotic pet trade during the late 20th century. At the time, giant snakes became popular pets. Many people bought baby pythons without realizing they could eventually grow longer than a car. Then came the predictable problem. Some snakes escaped. Others were intentionally released when owners realized they could no longer control or care for them. Florida turned out to be almost perfect for the species. The wetlands were warm, food was abundant, and there were very few natural predators capable of stopping them. With little resistance, the python population exploded. The ecological damage became severe very quickly. Inside Everglades National Park, mammal populations crashed dramatically. In some areas, raccoons, rabbits, and opossums declined by more than 90% within just a few decades. The pythons were simply too effective. Part of the reason lies in the way these snakes eat. For most animals, prey size is limited by the size of the mouth. Burmese pythons work differently. Their lower jaws are split into two separate halves connected by stretchy ligaments. Each side can move independently, allowing the mouth to spread extremely wide. On top of that, their skin and soft tissues stretch dramatically without tearing. Instead of ripping prey apart, the snake slowly pulls the animal inward little by little, swallowing it whole, even when the prey is much wider than its own head. These snakes have been documented swallowing deer and even fighting alligators. That ability helped them spread rapidly across Florida. Nobody knows exactly how many Burmese pythons now live in the state. Females can lay dozens of eggs at a time, and if enough young survive, the population grows incredibly fast. Some estimates suggest there are tens of thousands of pythons hiding throughout Florida's wetlands, though the true number remains unknown. As the invasion grew, wildlife officials became increasingly concerned because the snakes seemed nearly impossible to stop. Then the mysterious disappearances started. At first, researchers suspected American alligators. Alligators are powerful predators capable of killing large prey, and alligator-python battles had already been documented before. But there was a problem. Alligator attacks leave evidence behind. When an alligator kills prey, it usually grabs the animal, spins violently, and tears it apart. Such attacks are messy and obvious. But the missing pythons showed none of that. No wounds, no torn flesh, no blood. Everything looked far too clean. Researchers then considered mammals like bobcats or bears. But mammal attacks also leave clear evidence behind: bite marks, torn tissue, or partially eaten remains. Again, none of that was found. The pythons simply vanished. At that point, scientists realized they might be looking in the wrong direction entirely. So instead of guessing, they focused carefully on the radio transmitters and waited for another disappearance. Their goal became simple: catch whatever was killing the pythons. Eventually, they tracked another moving signal deep into the swamp. Again, they expected to find remains of a dead python. Instead, they found another snake carrying the transmitter inside its body. There was only one explanation. The predator had swallowed the python whole. Now scientists faced another mystery. What kind of snake could overpower and consume a young Burmese python? Most species simply are not built for that. But one native predator matched the evidence perfectly: the Florida cottonmouth. Cottonmouths are powerful ambush predators perfectly adapted to swamp habitats. They strike quickly, use venom to weaken prey, and are capable of swallowing surprisingly large animals whole. Suddenly, the disappearances finally made sense. Scientists noticed something especially surprising when comparing the sizes of predator and prey. The young python was nearly as large as the cottonmouth itself. Normally, size determines predator fights. The larger animal usually wins. But juvenile pythons are not yet as strong or defensive as fully grown adults. Their muscles and survival instincts are still developing. That weakness gave the cottonmouth the advantage. It could seize the python, overpower it, and slowly swallow it whole. For biologists, this discovery changed the way they viewed Florida's ecosystem. For years, Burmese pythons were considered nearly untouchable by native wildlife. But researchers now realized that local predators were beginning to adapt. Some animals were no longer simply defending themselves against the invasive snakes. They were actively hunting them. And it was not just cottonmouths. American alligators also prey on young pythons. bobcats have attacked larger individuals. In one documented case, a python named Loki was found partially eaten and hidden beneath pine needles, a behavior typical of bobcats storing food for later. Researchers even discovered bobcat claws embedded in the snake's body, proving a violent struggle had taken place. Pythons also face danger during reproduction. In June 2021, cameras captured a bobcat eating python eggs directly from a nest. Raptors attack young snakes from above, using sharp eyesight and lightning-fast strikes. Even American black bears have occasionally attacked vulnerable pythons when given the opportunity. Florida's ecosystem, in other words, has started fighting back. But the biggest question remains unanswered. Is it enough? Burmese pythons reproduce rapidly, spread quickly, and remain extremely difficult to find. Florida's python removal program has already removed more than 23,500 snakes, but compared to the overall population, that may still barely slow the invasion. The wetlands themselves work in the python's favor. These snakes disappear into grass, roots, mud, and dark water so effectively that researchers can stand nearby without seeing them. Right now, nobody knows exactly how this story will end. Nature does have ways of balancing itself over time. Ecosystems can adapt, and native predators may eventually help control invasive species. There are already signs that this process has begun. But the race has already started. The pythons continue spreading into new territory while native wildlife slowly learns how to fight back. Whether Florida's ecosystem can eventually bring the Burmese python invasion under control is something scientists may discover only in the years ahead.